Hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon. My name is Jamie. I'm with Farm Safety Nova Scotia. I'm joined by Blaise McNeil and Sterling Kendall, both of whom are safety advisors within the safety branch of the Department of Labour Skills and Immigration. They're here today to present to you a presentation on young workers, special considerations that you should have when hiring them. And we all know that the time of year is coming when the young people will be looking for work for the summer. So thank you again for joining us. If you do have a question during the presentation, please feel free to enter it into the Q&A or the chat sections that you'll see at the bottom, and we'll address those at the end. In any case, I'll let Blaise and Sterling introduce themselves and begin.
Thank you, Jamie. Well, first of all, a special thank you to Jamie O'Kane and Farm Safety Nova Scotia for inviting us to co-present today on a very important topic, which is sort of the things to remember and things to understand when onboarding or hiring youth into the farm industry. And I think I just want to start off by saying, to celebrate Canadian Agricultural Safety Week, which is obviously a very important week for the farm industry across Canada, and to remind us of some of the pitfalls and concerns when it comes to safety in that industry. So as Jamie mentioned, my name is Sterling Kendall. I am one of two safety advisors with the Nova Scotia government, specifically the Department of Labour Skills and Immigration, and I guess more specifically the Occupational Health and Safety Division. And I'm joined today by my colleague Blaise McNeil, who is our other safety advisor, and he is located in our Sydney office, whereas I'm located in our Halifax office, actually specifically in Dartmouth. But together we cover the entire province of Nova Scotia. So today we do have a lot of material that we'd like to go over with you. And I think just sort of in the interest of time, Blaise and I have sort of divided it where I'll do the first half, which will sort of talk about some of the background around the laws and the regulations here in Nova Scotia that pertain to the farm industry, but really to businesses as a whole. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the branch and what the branch does and how they can assist you should you ever have any questions or require assistance. It's very helpful for us to bring awareness and exposure to what the division does. It's not simply a means of enforcement. We also have a big, significant component around education and awareness, as well as providing free training and resources to businesses, whatever they may be. So we also want you to make you aware of that. I will be discussing the rights and responsibilities of workers in Nova Scotia, as well as employers as well. So there's two parts to that equation, understanding where we both fit. And I'll also be discussing a little bit about the internal responsibility system, which is really the theory on which occupational health and safety is based, and what that looks like and how that applies to farm businesses across Nova Scotia. So this next slide is we'll just provide a bit of an overview of what our objectives are here today. As I mentioned, we're going to go over the laws and regulations around health and safety in Nova Scotia, understanding your rights and responsibilities as a farm worker and employer. And again, this is very important when onboarding youth as well, because it's an important aspect for their understanding in terms of what their responsibilities are, and not to simply assume that the supervisor will sort of ensure their safety. They really have to understand where they fit into this and what their responsibilities are vis-a-vis their safety in the workplace. And finally, we're going to go over some of the common hazards in the farming industry and how to get more information or on appropriate controls to put in place to sort of minimize and mitigate those risks. And I think it's important to say that by no means am I an expert when it comes to farming. I have very limited knowledge, but I have done some research, and thank you, Jamie, for providing some amazing resources as well that will really help me in preparing this presentation. So I will, more than anything, I will point you in the direction of some amazing resources that are out there. And I'll urge you to, in addition to considering the ones that we'll make available to you, to really dig into those resources as well, as they're very, very helpful and easy to use. So I guess my next question, or my first question to you as a whole, and I understand that this might be a rhetorical question for myself, but I always like to sort of kind of get us thinking in terms of injury rates among youth. And this question here is, how much more likely is it for new workers to be injured in the first 3 months on the job compared to more experienced workers? Now, if anybody's guessed anything other than 33%, I'm afraid the number is 33%. So this is significant. that there is a significant risk of injury and vulnerability for people onboarding, whatever that new job may be. And there's several factors that we're going to look into at the next slide, in particular around youth. So the sad reality is that here in Nova Scotia, and I suspect this would be the case across Canada, young workers are indeed getting hurt in the workplace. And the following numbers that I'm going to share with you here are all taken from Work Safe for Life, which is a website created by the Nova Scotia Workers' Compensation Board to provide some industry information and some resources as well as statistics. So the research shows that workers under age of 25 are statistically at much greater risk of injury on the job. In the year 2022, 2,908 workers under the age of 25 were injured on the job in Nova Scotia. And just to put this in context, these were workers who reported their injury to Workers' Compensation Board and began a claim. And of those 2,908 claims, 566 of them result in time lost from work. So 1/5 of these injuries were so significant as to result in them not being able to actually attend work. So we're talking about some serious injuries in some cases. As well, it's important to note that there was a survey done on young workers specifically by the Industrial Accident Prevention Association, and they found that 56% of the youth reported that they had not received any training before taking on a new task. And this is significant because if with that lack of training or supervision often results in a lot of these incidents. So, what are some of the reasons behind these high injury rates among youth? I think for a long time people assumed, well, perhaps they're being reckless or perhaps they weren't listening, but that's really not the case at all. There's a lot more to it than that. More often than not, young workers are afraid to speak up. Oftentimes this can be their first job or their first experience in the workplace, and they really want to make a good impression and appear capable to the supervisors. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be the only person raising their hand. They don't want to be singled out. And they feel that raising these objections or concerns will certainly put them in that position. So that's something to be mindful of, and it really comes to the onboarding process, and it reflects in terms of your relationship as a supervisor and how you choose to supervise, and emphasizing the fact that you will be receptive to any question. No question is too dumb. No question is too insignificant. Everything matters, especially when it comes to safety or to operating any types of farm machinery. That they should feel very open discussing these issues with you. And again, the other aspect too is that oftentimes, youth entering the workplace do not want to necessarily seek advice from their supervisor, but will sometimes look around and try to follow the example of their coworkers, which can be a concern if the coworker has been a long time or this is not practicing safe standards themselves. So oftentimes a bad example, will lead to bad behavior, and at least I should say unsafe behavior. So sort of demonstrating how it should be done is an important component, and that starts with the supervisor, but it really has to also include all the colleagues as well. And that's part of the supervisor's responsibility, is to make sure that the workplace as a whole is following these guidelines, so that nobody gives the impressions that it's lax or it's not going to be enforced. So here on the right are just a couple numbers and statistics that I've taken, I guess, from the farm industry here in Canada. And, we average approximately 62 fatalities in agriculture per year. 63%, which I thought was quite telling, always occur between the months of May and October, which, is not surprising given the season. 300 of those impacted those age 60 plus. However, 91% of these were males that succumbed to their injuries. And the other interesting point as well, which I think is no surprise, is that 2/3 of these fatalities were machine related. So we're dealing with significant, electrical energies and shearing energies in these various farm equipment, which obviously is a high source of hazard to those working there. So next up, I think it's important to sort of discuss, who is the safety branch, and what is it that we do? I think for a long time, there has been a bit of a misconception that, the safety branch really are only around to enforce the laws and regulation, but that's only a small part of what we do. And The reality is that we sort of operate along a continuum where we really do seek to use community engagement as a means to sort of come up with, with updated regulations to make sure that it's reflective of the community and the industry standards as a whole. But we also, before any type of enforcement, we set the division and the officers who sort of help operate the division. There's definitely an effort to kind of proceed with education and awareness, which is really where Blaze and I fit in here to sort of make sure that the public is aware of the rules that apply to them, just so that nobody's taken off guard if or when an officer attends at your workplace, or if there's a situation where somebody reports a complaint or a concern about your business. So next up is, sort of a quick overview of what does the safety branch do, and these four main areas are taken directly from our legislation, and really the branch is designed to improve understanding within the community of Nova Scotia, to provide assistance to any workplace parties. So whether that be employers, employees, supervisors, owners, engineers, architect. There's a specific list of workplace parties listed in the Act. So we're here to provide assistance as well, whether it's in person or through a 1-800 number. We have dedicated information specialists on hand who are always able to answer questions that you may have. As well, there is a consistent part of enforcement which is required, and we'll speak about that a little bit further on, but also to encourage and conduct educational programs, which is what Blaze and I are doing here today, and we continue to do as well throughout the province, whether that be by attending career colleges or universities, as well as private businesses, and a means to sort of educate and ensure that everybody's aware of their rights and responsibilities. So just I think for everybody's reference, it may be somewhat helpful to sort of understand how the branch is structured, and I thought this might be a helpful way just to give you a bit of an idea of how we're structured. So the safety branch really is sort of made up of two main aspects, which is the sort of the occupational health and safety side, as well as the technical safety. I'll speak first about the technical safety. We are actually we are co-located, so we share an office, which is very helpful because we also can access the technical knowledge and skill if required. And conversely, if they need any assistance with outreach or education, we can also support them there. So the technical safety aspect of the branch sort of is made up of amusements and parks, cranes, elevators and lifts, power engineering, boilers and pressure equipment, electrical safety, and fuel safety. So these would regulate kind of the technical aspects of those areas. Oftentimes, every time you'll step into an elevator in Nova Scotia, you will see that certificate that will be issued, for example, by this particular area. In technical safety. So, like I said, we are co-located, but they really are independent in terms of what they're responsible for. The safety branch, the bigger part, I guess, or I should say, the part that Blaze and I operate in is called the occupational health and safety aspect. As the name implies, there's both the safety part in terms of the actual physical safety, but there's also the occupational health, which will involve other sort of oftentimes non-physical hazards such as smoke or air quality, bloodborne pathogens, things like that. So the way it's structured is we'll have the awareness and outreach group, which is sort of the group that Blaze and I belong to. This is sort of, we're part of, providing education and awareness. We'll have the investigations group, which is responsible for, looking into any significant incidents, accidents or fatalities in the workplace in Nova Scotia. They will determine whether or not prosecution and or potentially charges are mandated. Then we have our biggest area, which is inspection and compliance. This will be made up of our occupational health and safety officers, who number anywhere from 30 to 50 and are interspersed throughout the province of Nova Scotia. They would essentially be the public-facing aspect of our branch. They would be out there in the field more often than not, and sometimes whether they can attend at your workplace, whether through what we call an ad hoc inspection, which is the officer simply decides that on this day they wish to inspect this particular type of workplace, or it could be the result of a complaint or a question or complaint being called in, for example, either by a neighbor or somebody in the area, or somebody working within the workplace itself saying, I have a concern here, can somebody please come and assist us in resolving this issue? And finally, I want to mention the engineering and science group. This is made up of our technical specialists. So we'll have occupational hygienists on staff. We have building engineers, electrical engineers, mining engineers. They possess sort of a more specialized background and area, and they can, they're also occupational health and safety officers, so they have the ability to issue orders. But they oftentimes will help, the officers themselves if they encounter kind of a more technical situation that requires additional expertise. So all that to say that it's a one-stop shop for workplace health and safety, as well as the technical aspects of the workplace. So next up, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the safety branch and the laws that we apply. So the Occupational Health and Safety Act here in Nova Scotia is essentially the parent legislation that has created this division and sort of gives us authority and ability to do what we do. The important thing, the three main points that we need to remember here today is that it applies to all employers under provincial jurisdiction. Now, what that really means is that, as we're all aware, the federal government in Ottawa is sort of the centralized government and applies to, aspects of I guess, mobility, anything that's interprovincial. It can deal with airports and marine ports. But when it comes to the actual businesses themselves, they would fall under provincial jurisdiction. And the reality is that 90% of businesses in Canada would fall under provincial jurisdiction. So it's more often than not that the officers would be able to enforce the legislation there. The act itself is what we call the parent legislation. So in the act itself, it'll say that this act gives authority to the governor and council to create regulations to deal with the specifics. So rather than have specific regulations that deal with very technical aspects within the act itself, the act is somewhat more general and will deal with more the people within the workplace, as well as the rights and responsibilities and what the expectations are with regard to how they govern themselves, providing training, supervision, things like that. And the regulations will sort of apply to your business. So no two businesses are the same, but there will be regulations that will cover your specific aspects. So an example I'll give is that of a mine. We have specific regulations dedicated to mining. These are quite extensive, but of course it's something that applies only to the mine. And finally, and I think an important thing to remember is that these acts and regulations establish what we call mandatory minimums of health and safety in the workplace. The idea is that at no time, since this is a legal requirement, every business must comply with this. So at no point in time would you have the same business conducting the same operations at different levels of safety within Nova Scotia. And everybody can expect a minimum level of safety when entering a workplace in Nova Scotia. The important thing to remember for all businesses is that this is a minimum. Nothing prevents you from going above and beyond. And obviously, I think should that be the case, that would be a direct benefit to your business as well as to the safety of your employees. So next up here is a quick overview of the regulations that are created under the Act. I've sort of listed them in terms of popularity, or at least the ones that are probably the most accessed. First off is the Occupational Safety General Regulations, which is, I think, right now probably our most significant. It encompasses a lot of the important aspects required. Next up is the Workplace Health and Safety Regulation, which you may sometimes hear referred to as the WHISRs for short. The WHISRs essentially have now included first aid regulations, which previously had stood alone, fall protection, WHMIS, scaffold and other elevated platforms, administrative penalties, and temporary workplaces on highways. The idea is that in time, I couldn't tell you exactly how long this will be, but in time, all of the regulations will be moved over to the WHISRs, and the WHISRs will be essentially our one regulation that would include everything that you would need to know about workplace safety in Nova Scotia. So until then, this is how it's structured. We also have occupational diving, blasting safety, underground mining, as I mentioned previously, violence in the workplace, smoke-free workplaces, and the disclosure of information regulations. So we did touch briefly on, how does the safety branch enforce the act and regulations in Nova Scotia? Well, the reality is, if we were to act as the sole enforcers of safety, it would essentially be impossible to do so because in terms of staffing, we only have approximately 30 to 50 safety officers, depending on the time on the year. And we count upwards of 20,000 businesses in Nova Scotia. So having an officer dedicated to each business would simply be impossible. The idea really is that the officers are there to sort of support the internal responsibility system, which we'll talk about later, and to provide assistance to businesses in terms of reaching their compliance, and also to ensure by conducting inspections to ensure that any serious breaches are remedied right away, and that they're able to provide assistance to anybody who calls in for their assistance, whether that be, I have a concern about this particular job procedure, or, I have concern with air quality, or whatever that might be. The officers are trained in a wide variety of areas and are able to assist within their rights, within the abilities of the regulation. They can provide assistance. Here on the right-hand side is one of our pamphlets which we've recently created. I've included the QR code as well if you'd like to take a look directly. These are available online, but more and more we've been creating sort of short reference pamphlets for the public, just to better understand, the roles of an officer and what to expect if a safety officer attends at your workplace. You have an obligation or a responsibility to cooperate with the officer. It's not a question of anybody being in trouble, but their goal is to find out what is being done, if this represents a risk, and what needs to be done in order to close that gap. So next up, I'm going to play a short video, which is called the Internal Responsibility System. As I mentioned before, the IRS, as you'll often hear it referred to, is a theory on which health and safety is based in most Commonwealth countries, including Canada. And this was a video that was recently created by our awareness and outreach group. We're continuing to create more videos. This one we use regularly in the high schools and the universities. But I want to play it for you today. And again, it's available on YouTube as well. And I'll provide all the links if you'd ever wish to play it for your staff or your onboarding youth as part of the orientation package as well.
We all have a responsibility to ensure workplaces.
Oops.
We all have a responsibility to ensure workplaces are safe. Whether you're an employer, supervisor, or worker, we're all on the same team with different roles to ensure safe workplaces. So, what do you do if you see a health and safety issue? We all have a responsibility to ensure workplaces are with different roles to ensure safe workplaces. So, what do you do if you see a health and safety issue or workplace hazard? Fix it if you can, report it if you can't, and always make sure safety is the top priority. Employers, you're like the team coach. And like all great coaches, you need a plan. Having a safety policy and program demonstrates that safety is a priority in your organization. Your plan provides the information that everyone needs to work safely at your place of business. You provide PPE, maintain equipment, machines, and materials. You also consult and cooperate with the organization's Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee, as required. Supervisors, you're the leaders on the ground, the team captains. It's your role to ensure everyone understands why safety is important. You assign work, give direction, offer training, inspect and investigate concerns, correct hazards within your control, and report hazards that are beyond your control. You also don't allow work to continue if hazards exist or have been reported. Employees, you are the hands-on of the job, the players on each shift. You know best when it comes to seeing and mitigating hazards within your control. To support your team, your role is to report a hazard if there is something that makes you feel unsafe. If you're not sure, consult with your Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee or a representative when you have questions, concerns, or insight. You have the best point of view on the field to identify safety issues. Safe workplaces are the most important outcome for everyone. Safety is everyone's business.
Is everybody able to hear that one okay? Excellent. So this next slide sort of provides a bit of an explanation for the internal responsibility system, which really says that each and every one of us are responsible for health and safety within our workplace to the extent of our ability and authority to do so. And the reason this is important is that oftentimes, whether it's your first time in the job, or you've come from a different country, or perhaps things have done a little bit differently in the past, people sometimes assume that it's the responsibility of the supervisor or the business owner or operator to sort of ensure their safety. And this isn't, I think the idea perhaps is that they have the greater responsibility or authority to do so. But the truth is a little bit different. And what this slide kind of shows us is that authority and responsibility is really delegated from the top down. We can't expect the CEOs and VPs of the company to sort of be on the ground managing, water leaks or PPE. So they delegate that down, from the president to the VP to the manager, all the way down to the supervisor, and essentially down to the employee. However, the accountability in the event of something happens really starts at the top. And that's what we'll see in the safety policy that is issued by the company, saying that I acknowledge my responsibility around providing health and safety. Now, the reason the system is important is that it's intended to really empower each and every one of us as employees in the workplace to see ourselves as sort of champions of safety. More importantly, as somebody who has a responsibility to report any safety concerns that we have or situations that we come across that are unsafe. The expectation is not that we should single-handedly address it or put ourselves at risk to fix it. At a minimum, what is expected of us is to report that to the person above us in a better position to do so. So the idea is that the employee on the ground comes across a situation, perhaps the guard doesn't work, perhaps the inspection date has passed, or the job itself is deemed unsafe. They'll report that to the supervisor. The supervisor doesn't have the ability or authority to issue a work order to fix that, or this requires a substantial investment on behalf of the company. Then they'll have to escalate that in turn to the manager. We'll then pass it up to the VP. But at the end of the day, all of this will start at the level of the employee, and the employee needs to be made well aware that this is a right and responsibility that they essentially have, and there's an expectation from those above them to actually report this and make them aware of it. So it goes both ways, and it's important that the employee knows and understands that by the way that you share this information as part of the onboarding, that you make it aware that this is an expectation, that this is who you report that to, and then we'll take it from there. So really, it's about authority and responsibility, but also accountability, because at the same time, it's ultimately the owner of the business or the director or whoever's at the top of the business will be ultimately accountable for the actions, or in the worst case scenario, for any incidents or time loss claims that occasioned from his employees. So here's a quick summary as well. And I also want to point out here on the right-hand side, I've included another one of our pamphlets, which we've created specifically for the internal responsibility system. It's a concept that, it's fairly straightforward, but not everybody is familiar with it. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at it. I've included the QR code as well, which will take you directly to the link on our website. Also, if you ever wish to access any of this information, I'll make sure that Jamie has a copy of everything, and you're more than welcome to reach out to him as well. So the quick aspects to remember about the internal responsibility system is that really it's a means to ensure compliance with the legislation. We have everybody in the workplace is now committed to the safety. It's not just the preserve of one person, so everybody can do that now. It really signals a commitment to work safely, and it creates a workplace that minimizes the risk of injury. Again, I think it goes without say that the time loss claims or incidents or accidents in the work can have a devastating effect on the physical integrity of the workplace, but also the overall attitude of the workplace and the productivity. In addition to that, there can be a significant impact on your business in the event of injuries or accidents. So this really allows us to sort of work together and to make our workplace safe. And finally, it really opens up a means of communication and cooperation. So gone are the days where safety was the responsibility of one person, and that one person had all the control about safety. We have the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee. If your business or operations are big enough for more than 20 employees, you'll have a safety committee which is made up of equal parts of employer and employee representatives. This will be the brain trust that will come together on a monthly basis to discuss health and safety concerns. If you have more than 5 but less than 20, you'll have a safety representative. This person should be trained on aspects of health and safety, and they're able to sort of assist management or the employee if they come across situations where safety is a concern. So it's really a shared venture, we should all see ourselves reflected in the safety culture of our business and our operations. Now, the important part, the internal responsibility system is a nice theory, but in order for it to function, the employees need to know that they have rights and responsibilities that are attached to that. And, sometimes we can see them as two separate and distinct aspects of it, but they're really very closely related, because for the IRS to function, employees need to know that they can speak up, that they have protections for speaking up, but they also need to know that they have freedoms in terms of, requesting information if they're concerned about, how to do certain work, that they should feel comfortable doing so. And this next part will sort of discuss what those rights and responsibilities are. Again, I'm going to I'm highlighting one of the pamphlets that we've also created on this. It's available in both English and French. I've included the QR code, and I urge you to take a look at it as well. It's a great pamphlet to have on hand. I know you can circulate it to your staff at any given time, post in the lunchroom. It's a great reminder, for what these rights and responsibilities are. So, like I said, the Act itself will govern people in the workplace. Who qualifies as a workplace party is quite a long list. Like I said, that would include employees, employers, the owners, service providers. Right now, the next two slides are really going to focus for now only on the employer and the employee. So again, please don't take this as the end. All of them, they're not meant to be fully inclusive. I'm just going to take these two aspects, but I urge you to take a look at the Act. If you belong to any of those other workplace parties. So employers under Section 13 of the Act, they must take every reasonable precaution. That's an important aspect, every reasonable precaution, because it doesn't mean necessarily to, put themselves in a situation of debt or to run themselves out of business to do these things. It's really what's deemed reasonable in the circumstances, but significant efforts should be made. And for the most part, none of the things requested here are that significant. Mainly is to ensure the health and safety of persons at or near the workplace, which is really quite generic, and it covers a lot of things, but it's just to overall signal that they do have that responsibility to take precautions to ensure that health and safety, to provide and maintain equipment, machines, materials, or things that are properly equipped with safety devices. Again, the employer has the greatest degree of control over these aspects, so it really falls on them to ensure that that they take reasonable precautions to make sure these things are done. To provide information, instruction, training, supervision, and facilities necessary for the health and safety. So this is often, you'll see this provision dealing with the training and supervision, which is a key aspect in every workplace. Ensuring that employees are familiar with health and safety hazards in the workplace. So, you'll often see this as part of the onboarding process as you take your employee around your new workplace, to be mindful of these concerns, what personal protective equipment is required for them. Again, the next one is ensuring the employees are familiar with the proper use of all devices, equipment, and clothing required for their protection, that they're wearing their PPE properly and regularly, and following the rules around that. Ensuring that employees are not exposed to health or safety hazards, which again I think is attached to the first one, but again it can be specific that you want to ensure that adequate controls are put in place to mitigate and minimize any risk of exposure. Again, consulting and cooperating with the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee or the safety representative, it sort of reinforces the internal responsibility system, that it's a means of communication, and that the employer should be relying upon their internal employees when addressing safety concerns, ensuring that everybody complies with the Act and regulations, and establishing a policy and program where applicable. That wouldn't apply to businesses with less than 5 employees, but those where it does, they would have to follow that provision. Now, in terms of the employees, there is a few less aspects of it, but these nevertheless are all extremely important. So Section 17 of the Act will govern the rights and responsibilities of employees. Employees must cooperate with the employer. I mean, that's a given, and other employees to protect their health and safety at the workplace. I think typically that would be seen in terms of the employer's policies and procedures, expectations, code of conduct, anything that governs the workings guidelines of the employer's business they'll have to follow, using and wearing protective equipment that's required, or whatever is clothing required by the employer, and consulting, cooperating with a joint safety committee or a safety representative, whether that's as part of an internal inspection or investigation. If there's any questions about the employee, if they witness something, they to cooperate with that as well, and to follow the safe work procedures and the act and the regulations. So next up, I'm going to talk about the 3 fundamental rights of every employee in Nova Scotia. These hopefully everybody has come across these or learned of them early on. Unfortunately, a lot of employees don't necessarily know what these are or how to properly exercise them, and that's the important thing too, because these are fundamental to the internal responsibility system, because it really provides you that protection of when speaking up. It also empowers you to ask the questions that you need to ask, and sometimes through those conversations and that communication, sometimes the employer is made aware of things that they just simply wasn't on their radar, and that's through no fault of their own. It's just something that wasn't considered. But having that communication, that open communication, will also sort of bring this to the forefront. So the first one is the right to know. And the right to know, what does that look like? Well, employees have the right to know about issues that could affect the health and safety. Any hazards in the workplace itself, need to be shared with them. How to properly use all required protective devices. How to report unsafe conditions. Who do I speak to? How do I go about voicing my concerns about an issue? Do I speak to my supervisor? Yes. Do I speak to the safety committee? Yes, you can do that too. But of course, you'll always want to start with a supervisor, the person who's directly above you. Again, you have the right to know about your company's safety policy and program, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, what's required to be posted so you can access this. Any training that's required. You have you have a right to access, inspection reports on monitors or testing done, and as well as you have the right to know about with the safety committee, that you can access it or read the information or belong to it. Next up is the right to participate. This is, every employee can participate either as a JOSH committee member or a safety representative. They can provide input on matters that affect their health and safety. They can, by reporting unsafe conditions. So this is deemed part of their participating in the workplace and the safety of the workplace. And, they can also participate by accompanying a safety officer through the Department of Labor if they come for an inspection in the workplace. And last but not least, and this is the one that most people, will default to right away, is our right to refuse. And of course, that's an incredibly important right, which is the right to refuse unsafe or unhealthy work. And the situation is when you have reasonable grounds to believe that the work is likely to endanger the health and safety of yourself or any other person at or near the workplace. Now, this is a very important right, and the idea being that it should eliminate any undue pressure, whether that be through you're scared to lose your job or you're concerned about demotion, whatever it is. And I think a big reason is to avoid situations of tragedies where perhaps there were safety concerns that were not addressed or not reported because people were too scared to lose their job. So this right is fundamental to the IRS and to making people comfortable with reporting their concerns. However, there is a process to follow, and this is part of the orientation as well. I think it's helpful for employees to know how to go about this. So if a situation is exposed, if an employee is exposed to an unsafe work situation, of course, the first step will always be to report the issue to the supervisor, to the employer. They're the first person of contact. They have the best ability to make a change. Now, if the supervisor is able to resolve the issue right away, perhaps it's just a question of changing out the material or finding a different mechanism of doing that, then the issue is resolved and they can return to work. However, if the employee is not satisfied with the answer provided by the supervisor, they can still escalate this to the next level, which would be their safety committee or the safety representative if it's less than 20. So the safety committee will meet on this aspect. Again, it's going to be made up of both employee representatives, and if they find a resolution to the issue that is satisfactory, then the employee will return to work. If they come up with a solution and the employee is still not happy with that, there's no resolution, they can always report this concern to the Health and Safety Division. An officer will then be dispatched to the workplace. They will attend and they will look at the issue itself. The officer, has the power and authority under the Act to issue compliance orders to address the situation. And again, they are deemed sort of the expert in that field. But the important thing to remember is that when the officer attends, they will always ask first, did your employee report it to the supervisor, and what steps have you taken to address it? So they don't want to just come in and sort of take away the power of the company to resolve the issue. They really want to facilitate and support the company in coming up with what's best for the company in that particular situation. Next up is what we call discriminatory action complaints. And I'm not going to spend too much time, but the important aspect to remember is this is a provision under the Act, under Section 45 of the Act, which means that a discriminatory action is deemed any action that can adversely affect an employee with respect to the terms of the conditions of employment. So really, it's meant to protect an employee if or when they've exercised any of these rights under the Act, if in any way they have been, they're dismissed, or if they've had a change in their work conditions, or they've transferred or been demoted. The idea is that they can contact the Department of Labor, and an officer will investigate that, and they have the authority to put them back in the position where they were before they were demoted or in any way sanctioned, or if there's any back pay lost. So it's really the protection for these rights, knowing that these aren't just kind of empty rights, that you do have protections associated with them as well. So a big question is, whether you're working on the farm or in a situation of manufacturing or retail, where does an employee go to find information about health and safety in their business? So there are some that are required. Most of these are requirements under the legislation. And the first parts, I'll just kind of go through the list, which is a copy of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. You can have a paper copy posted, or the person should be able to access it electronically. And for example, if you don't have, cell phone reception, whatnot, then you'll definitely want to have a paper copy available. But otherwise, as long as they know how to access it, the contact information for the safety division, so how they can contact us if they have any concerns or complaints. The safety policy of the farm, if they would apply, any orders, compliance notices, or anything that was issued by the Department of Labor, just so they can see, so I can see a safety officer inspected the farm or inspected my business. This is what they came across. I'm aware of this now. The names and contact information of the committee members, so I can, if I have a question that's perhaps not a refusal situation, but I just have a question about health and safety, I'm perhaps not comfortable asking my supervisor, I can go to any member of my committee member or my safety representative and speak about it with them. And finally, committee meeting minutes. So if your committee meets, if you have one and they meet every month, then they should post the committee minutes so we can see how, if there were any safety concerns and how those were addressed. Additional information that is farm specific, location of first aid supplies, emergency information, signs identifying confined spaces, gases that are stored, what they are, the hoist's rated load, maximum revolutions per minute of an abrasive wheel or grinder. I mean, these are all very specific, but again, no two farms are the same, so you really have to think about which ones apply to you and should be posted in a way that everybody can identify the hazard and the controls put in place. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit with the time that I have before I pass it over to Blaise about some of the the hazards in the farm industry and how to control those hazards. So what is a hazard? I mean, generically, it's a hazard is any source of potential damage, harm, or adverse health effect on something or someone. There are several types of hazards, and again, in no particular order of importance. We have the biological ones, chemical, ergonomic, physical, psychosocial, and safety hazards. These can be anything from bacteria and viruses, insects and plants, which we'll talk a little bit more, chemicals, ergonomic, repetitive motions, which is also very common as well in more manual labor, psychosocial, which is something we're going to be addressing as well in the next few months a lot, and safety concerns, inappropriate guarding on machines and things like that. So the next few slides are really more about agriculture as a whole and farm safety. And this first one is sort of I've taken this from the model policy for Canadian youth employment in agriculture. And it's a voluntary guideline, which is sort of created for farms in Canada. I believe it was initially taken from an American study, if I'm not mistaken, but they came up with some very helpful guidelines. Specifically, I think this one I took was for workers from 14 to 17. Around training and supervision, I think, it goes without say that under the age of 18, there is a concern in terms of maturity and understanding. So there is that need for direct visual supervision, close proximity from one responsible adult who is, physically located at that work site. So training for young hired workers should also include clear communication and documentation of the allowed and prohibited work activity in and around the workplace. We have concerns, of course, everybody's using their cell phone, we have the earphones in, things like that. I mean, if there's an expectation around operating heavy machinery, or if there's a need for communication, somebody needs to get your attention right away. These expectations need to be communicated very, very clearly. The next aspect is really about the supervisor training, because at a young age group, really there is more, I guess, there's a greater need for care and control from the supervisor. So, what are some of the things that the supervisor sort of watching these young workers need to be aware of or trained in. Really, it's around existing age-based work rules. I'm not familiar with all of them, but I know there are certain age groups that it's not appropriate to do certain work groups, so that's something you'd want to look into. Physical and cognitive abilities of youth. This may impact what machinery they can and cannot use, or should not be using. Whether there's a need for extra supervision and frequent training. Basic emergency response practices, both general and specific to the workplace. And finally, and very importantly as well, harassment prevention, including sexual harassment. This is a big aspect of our ongoing operations, and as well, there'll be a lot of changes, I think, in the near future around the regulation of discrimination, harassment, and bullying in the workplace. So it's very important that supervisors sort of be aware of these and be able to sort of address them and assess them and remedy them if they see it in their workplace. Next off, I've taken these as well from the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association's website. Again, it's a sad reality here that unfortunately a lot of children succumb to injuries in the farm industry in Canada. It's interesting that 80% of them are boys. But some of the serious, I guess, incidents involve machine runovers, drownings, and machine rollovers are the three leading causes of death. And sadly, 72% are often the child of the farm operators, and often this involves very young ages. The top five safety strategies, which I think you'll probably see in most farming industries, are really keeping kids away from tractors, keeping young children out of the work site, ensuring age and ability appropriate work, which is something we discussed earlier as well, and really ensuring the environment is safe as possible. This, whether this is by reducing hazards through, administrative controls, engineering controls, or also kind of ensuring that personal protective equipment is made available. And finally, the aspect of training for work and tasks is very, very important. And sometimes that might involve additional supervision for a long time, retraining, monthly, weekly demonstrations on certain tasks, things like that. Next up, I'm just going to show an incredible resource, which again was shared by Jamie here. I've included the link, the QR code on the very top. This again is taken from the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association, and they've put together this amazing resource which really talks about all the various hazards that one might commonly find in the farm industry. And again, there are many of them. I'm not going to go through each and every one in detail. However, you can access them there. But however, for the point of illustration, I have picked sort of the two ones which I thought might be relevant, in terms of young people perhaps entering the farm industry for the first time. I imagine they'll start off with something relatively simple. So example, working outdoors. This one is taken from that website, and you can print it off, and it'll talk about how can youth do the job safely, what's required, and what are the common hazards and the protective strategies. So working outdoors, we want to be mindful of heat and cold stress. Sorry, I know I had street there, I should mean stress. Chemicals, weather, bugs or insects, and drowning, which we saw is a common hazard as well on farms. Next up, hand harvesting as well, which I think is often commonly done here in Nova Scotia as well. With dealing with slippery and uneven surfaces, repetitive motion injuries. Perhaps rotating the job, being mindful about how long the youth is doing that particular job. Chemicals which they may be exposed to, them being aware of the content of those chemicals, being aware where to access the safety data sheet on that chemical, what protective equipment is required when touching those chemicals, sharp objects, make how to use them in a safe manner, and of course, lifting and carrying. MSI injuries are a significant portion of the WCB claims that are seen. So, understanding that this could be a risk and one that could really hurt the youth on a forward basis as well. All right, this concludes my section of the presentation. Blaise, would you like to take it from here?
Sure, Sterling. I think I might need you to advance the slides for me there because I don't believe I have control, so that's fine.
Okay, that's no problem.
Yep. Okay. All right, so yeah, it's Blaise McNeil. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon as part of this, Agricultural Safety Week. So I'm going to talk about some of the free health and safety training resources that you can access through the safety branch. So Sterling, next slide, please. So one of our resources is called the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. So there's more than 100 online courses that are available on many different popular health and safety topics. Some of them that we have an agreement with CCOHS, I think we have about 32 that are available right now for free, and there are others with a cost. And as you can see on the bottom of the slide there's the QR code to give you access to that. Sterling, next slide. So just to give you an overview of some of the courses that are relevant for the agricultural sector. So orientation on health and safety for agricultural workers, compressed gases, confined spaces, developing an OHS program, emergency preparedness, hazard and risk, identify, assess, control, and evaluate, ladder safety, PPE, and working at heights. Next slide there, Sterling. So here is our website. So when you go to www.novascotia.ca, that'll take you to our website, and if you click on the link there on the left-hand side that's highlighted in yellow, it's training. That'll take you to this page, and you can see the link there, or it says CCOHS Nova Scotia OHS training. You click on that link, and you'll have to that'll take you to the CCOHS page, and you'll have to set up an account. And that way, when you set up the account, they'll send you something to your email basically saying, congratulations, thank you for setting up your account. And that way you'll be able to go on further in future to sign up for some courses. The next slide, Sterling. And here's some of the other courses that are available through Farm Safety Nova Scotia. So agricultural road safety, animal handling, intro to farm safety in Spanish, pesticide safety awareness, skid steer safety awareness, tractor and farm machinery, and WMS, both in English and Spanish. And there's also a QR code there in the bottom left to access those courses. So go ahead, Sterling. And the next one, this is Skills Online Nova Scotia. So this is the one that's highlighted at the top there. It's the newest course that we have. It's called New and Vulnerable Worker Safety. This is a course with 5 modules. Talks about an introduction to occupational health and safety, your rights and responsibilities. And the one thing I really like about this course, and I believe, Jamie, that you had taken this course already to kind of have a review of it. The thing I like about it at the end, it sort of showcases a bunch of different occupations. So, the participants go in and click on those different occupations, and it'll show you the different hazards that are associated with that occupation and some of the corrective actions that you can take. And again, you can access these courses through Skills Online through the previous link that I showed you there on the training page of our website. And next slide, same thing with the Skills Online as well. You'll have to set up an account. So you go in, you'll have to use an email address, and then you'll be able to access the courses after you set up your account. Next slide, Sterling. So just before I go back, just something else to mention about those courses with both the CCOHS and the Skills Online. They're both online courses that you can take. And when you complete those courses, you get what's called a certificate of completion. So when you complete the course, you'll get an email saying, congratulations, you completed this course. And here's a link to your certificate. So you can either print that off. It's usually sent in a PDF format, or you can save it digitally to your phone or whatever. just a good way, a good record to have to show that you're competent in that particular subject and you've got some training or information. And again, not every, when we talk about training, training is information, training is knowledge, training is skill. So, not everything is going to be like have a hands-on component to it. So, some of the free training is just as good as some of the training that you would pay money for. So it's really important to, check out some of those courses, and even some of the courses that are offered through Skills Online are not just safety related. Some of them are communications, leadership, so different courses that would be really beneficial to your workplace. Yep, as you can see here. So multi-generational workshop, generational workplaces. You've got workplace enhancement ones, so like welcoming workplaces, workforce development, workplace etiquette, working with difficult people. So next slide, Sterling. So this is our slide about our NovaSafe web app. So this is available currently both in English and French. This was launched, I believe it was in 2022, in May of 2022. It's basically a web-based app. So whether you have it on your phone or you have it on a tablet or a laptop, it's formatted so that it looks appropriate for the device that you're using. So it's basically, as it says here, safety information made simple. There's a QR code that'll give you access to that. And Sterling, I think if you go to the next slide, it'll give us a short video about NovaSafe.
When you're stepping up safely for your job, use the NovaSafe app. Safety information made simple. A message from the Government of Nova Scotia.
So a number of jurisdictions across Canada are sort of developing these sorts of apps, because basically everybody has one of these. Everybody seems to have a cell phone. They're with them sort of 24/7. Sometimes they're a good thing. Sometimes they're not such a good thing because they can be a distraction. But if it's a way of, giving people access to health and safety information at the fingertips, it's fantastic. So this is an example here of a topic you can search right now. I believe we have about 33 topics that are populated on our NovaSafe app, and we're looking at adding another, I believe, 16 this year. So it is a work in progress. We're always adding different topics. So this example here is about personal protective equipment. So you can see at the top there. So the top kind of gives you a summary of the topic itself. And down below, so one of the other links, so to the right of that, where it talks about the legislation, it'll actually point you to where does the Nova Scotia legislation talk about personal protective equipment. And then the last one there is about resources. So if you go to the next slide, Sterling. So this is the resources link. So there are resources, a lot of resources that are available through the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. So some resources are developed by us within the safety branch, but a lot of resources can be accessed from other jurisdictions like CCOHS. Next slide, Sterling. And there's more resources available for the safety branch. So we have a quarterly newsletter that we put out. It's called The Signal. So this has a lot of different topics from the safety branch, from the inspection and compliance folks, right up to the technical safety. We also even seems to be a popular section of the Signal is our sort of year review of all the inspections and compliance orders and even fatalities that have happened in Nova Scotia. So it's a great resource. And if you're ever looking for, a topic, say you're looking to have a toolbox talk or a safety talk with your employees, this is a great resource to access. We also have our contact list. So anytime we do sort of public engagements, and Sterling had mentioned earlier, like we're now looking at, psychological health and safety in Nova Scotia. So we did a bunch of public engagements back in December. So again, you'll be notified about those. We also have what we call notifications. So whether it's a safety alert, a bulletin, a directive, or a safety notice, and they're sort of defined there what they are. So depending on your sector or your industry, if there's something around a piece of equipment or a best practice, you'll get those notifications as well if you subscribe to our contact list. And I believe that QR code at the bottom of the screen there will take you to our contact list, so you can sign up for the Signal as well as those notifications. The next slide, Sterling. And this is our Make the Right Call campaign. So we've been running this campaign now for, I'm thinking, at least 5 years. And basically what it is it's not only about, if you see something that's unsafe, you can call the Occupational Health and Safety Division. We always encourage people, follow the internal responsibility system, especially if you're an employee, follow the IRS, talk to your supervisor first, give them the opportunity to make things right. But for some reason, if that doesn't happen, then, you can always call us anonymously. So at the 1-800-9-LABOR, that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And as I said, it's strictly confidential. The only time they may ask you for information is, again, if it's a complaint about a workplace, they may want some specific information. So, if they have to dispatch one of our OHS officers or one of our folks from the engineering and science division, they just want to make sure they send them to the right place. So, and even if you have just general questions about occupational health and safety, by all means, call the toll-free number. So whether it's about, occupational health and safety or technical safety, you can call that number as well. Or if you feel more comfortable, you can send us an email to that email address there on the screen. Next slide, Sterling. And finally, this is other ways to connect with us. So there's our website, novascotia.ca. This WorkSafe for Life, as Sterling mentioned before, this is sort of a joint initiative between us, the Department of the Safety Branch, and the Workers' Compensation Board of Nova Scotia. There's the link to our NovaSafe app. We also have a number of YouTube videos. So we do have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/NS WorkSafe for Life. And the last resource there is if you want to sort of keep up to date on safety matters, things like, different, as Sterling mentioned before, we're always producing different materials, printed materials, different videos, and public consultations. So some of these are pushed out on our social media through X. So if you want to follow us there, it's at @NS_labor skills. And I think that might be it for me, Sterling. Yes. So that was pretty quick. Sorry, I went over some time there. So I'm just wondering if we have any questions in the chat, Jamie, or anyone has any questions for Sterling and I?
I don't see any questions in the chat. I do have a question of my own that maybe one of you could answer. Say I'm an employer that's hiring a young worker for the first time this summer. What's the number one thing that you could recommend to me to help keep them safe and build that safety relationship?
That's a great question, Jamie. I think my answer would be communication. I think establishing early on that that this isn't necessarily a sort of a top-down approach, that really that you need them as much as they need you in terms of the relationship around health and safety. And really sort of and leading by example as well. I think we sometimes underestimate how much youth look to us in terms of how we do things. So really setting the tone in terms of how you embrace safety in your own work. Leading by example, I think that would be my top recommendation. But I mean, I'll defer to Blaze as well. Blaze has a lot of experience as a safety officer, so you might have some other thoughts as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sterling. And I totally agree with Sterling. And I just want to add, it's so important that young workers know who the supervisor is. I didn't mention at the beginning, but I was an inspector for 16 years, and there were so many workplaces that I went to where workers had no idea who was in charge. They had no idea who the supervisor was. And if you look at, the internal responsibility system in our legislation, the first thing it says to an employee is if you have a health and safety concern, talk to your supervisor. That's the, fundamental in the internal responsibility system. So if you don't know who that person is, how could you possibly do that? So it's really important. And, you gotta walk the talk. If they have a question or concern, if you say you have an open door policy, don't always have your door closed, because you're just kind of sending the message that, well, I really don't have an open door policy, because every time somebody wants to come and ask you a question, your door is closed. So it's really important that you just, it's important what you do, that you kind of back up what you're saying, right? So, if they have a question, give your undivided attention to them, make sure that, that you're listening intently to what their concerns are, because, young workers, they're scared. As we said before, they're afraid to sometimes speak up. They don't want to feel like they're putting a target on their back, or they're going to get themselves in trouble. So it's really important that you lead by example.
And I do have another aspect I'd like to add as well, is from the communication. I think it's important that we also recognize that, for the young generation entering the workplace, their method and preferred ways of communication are often different than ours. Whereas we maybe feel comfortable picking up the phone or having the face-to-face conversation, oftentimes that may feel quite intimidating for youth, especially youth 15 to 18. So, having a discussion early on in terms of what's the best way to communicate with you. How would you prefer to be spoken to about these issues? And, perhaps that's, everybody coming together as a group first thing in the morning, so nobody's singled out. They might say, well, text messaging works best for me, assuming that it's, it's not it's not unsafe for them to do that in the field. Perhaps, having, I don't know, a blast email sent out, whatever it is, just sort of being receptive to communicating in a different way, sometimes can go a long ways as well.
That is a very good point, yes. And thank you both for your answers. Very well thought out and informative. Is there any other questions from the participants? I don't see any, so we'll stop it there. I want to thank you both very much for the presentation. Very informative, educational. I hope that everybody that came here to take part today walked away with some new information. And thank you both very much for your time today, and for everybody else for coming.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for having us and for giving us an opportunity to speak to you and your members. And I guess on this week, I want to make sure everybody continues to work safe, and I wish you all a very happy, healthy, and productive summer.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.